My name is Jerm. This is Germ Warfare, the battle of ideas. Ludwig Gartz, thank you again for joining me in the trenches.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here.
I need to make it clear that I have never read Harry Potter and I've never watched the movies. However, I had to do a huge amount of homework in a very short space of time. So please go easy on me.
Sure. I won't treat you as a Harry Potter fan. So,
having said that, my wife is a huge fan. She's got all the books and she's watched all the movies multiple times. And I think probably most of the world has. I mean, it's an incredibly part of the popular culture zeitgeist.
I got into it because my sons loved it. So, yeah.
Why is Harry Potter so important, do you think?
Well, he expresses something, or he touches something that goes far deeper than the conscious awareness of people, and which is touching something that is really happening at the moment. So it's in a way like Tolkien wrote about the Lord of the Rings, that he eventually on a few occasions said, "I know that I'm writing the truth." In many ways, J.K. Rowling is writing the truth, some truth about our time, in a symbolic way, that the mind or the human spirit deep in the mind understands on a deeper level. And actually, I think that if any writing doesn't really touch something in the depth of the human mind, it won't really become popular, or as popular as these two have become. So there's some truth into it, and that's why I started writing about it. First, a book about the symbolism, where I explained all the figures and all the aspects of it, Hogwarts itself, the four houses, the meaning of the different wizards, the meaning of the kids, which are at the center of this, which might be a good starting point to start with Harry Potter, Ron, and Hermione.
If we just zoom out a little bit, Ludwig, you previously said to me that, in your opinion, Tolkien was a genius. Do you think Rowling is also a genius?
Yes, she is. And but I see that genius only in the 7 Harry Potter films. The other things she did is somehow. So you have to be a genius, and for something to write something as powerful as Harry Potter, you also have to have that connection to the divine. And I think when she wrote Harry Potter, she had that. And like with the Fantastic Beasts and the other stuff, she didn't have it. And you can feel that.
So your overarching argument is that the whole Harry Potter universe is a spiritual allegory of humanity.
I wouldn't call it allegory, because allegory is something that, you see, the human mind has different levels. We have this energetic mind, which comes from our biology, where you have things like desire, envy, jealousy. That's aspects of the energetic mind. Then you have the mental mind, where you have all the thoughts. And then you have the spiritual mind, which goes deeper, where you have the essence of who we are. The love, the joy, the innocence. That's all part of the spiritual level, which is who we are. And Tolkien has the dwarves, the men, and the elves, for these three levels. And allegories, and Tolkien, for instance, didn't like allegories at all. He didn't like his work to be considered an allegory. Allegories work on the mental level. It's like you say something symbolically, you think about it, and you see the analogy to the real world. What he wrote, and also what Harry Potter is one level deeper. It speaks not to the mental level, but to who we are. which is a deeper level. So we see it's very meaningful, but the mind, on the mental level, we don't really understand why this touches us so much. Because it speaks directly to who we are as a human being. And that's the highest form of art for me. And for me, Tolkien is actually the supreme master in this. And with Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling did a very good job as well.
So instead of it being an allegory, it's more of holding up a mirror to humanity.
Yeah, it's a message to the spirit. Because it's what's in the spirit, what's ultimately there is the battle between the love that we are and the ego that tries to reign instead of the love. Because love and ego is two things that exclude each other. It's the two sides, the light and the darkness. And that's where the battle is, no? With the good wizards and the bad wizards. The good wizards is our real essential qualities, our spiritual qualities, and the bad wizards is the aspects of the ego that tries to really take over and reign instead of love.
So it's the fall of human consciousness into, let's say, darkness, which would be the ego and related abstract concepts, and then about our way back into the consciousness of love.
Yeah, it's as a whole. If you look at the condition of the world as a whole, we've very much lost our way, and everyone is. Particularly also Western culture in the last 60 or so years, we've very much celebrated the ego. You can have your way, and also with the LGBTQ agenda that they have pushed in the last decades, you can be whatever you want. You don't have to respect natural limits. If you're born a boy, you can be a woman. If you're born a girl, you can be a man. And everything is pleasing to the human ego. You can do whatever you want. But of course we cannot, because there are rules and there's divine things that are givens that we must accept as they are. But the last 60 years have been an increasing just celebration of the human ego, and the more people fell for their ego, the bigger a mess this world became. And we are very much on this dark side now, basically through the mainstream media, because they lured us there.
The media, in conjunction with governments and
because
multinational
they
corporations,
controlled by all the same people, the governments and the media and the big corporations.
The establishment.
It's the same people, yeah. People who want chaos, because if we move away from who we are, we can be easily manipulated, and they have all the power. That's why they always try to get us away from the real things and into illusions. Because then if we go for the illusions of our ego, we lose all our power.
A number of critics of Potter and Rowling have argued that her work itself, Harry Potter itself, is a deflection. And by getting caught up in it, is a distraction from all the things that you're speaking about.
If you don't understand the symbolic meaning of the figures, there was a lot of criticism, particularly from the churches, from the Christian camp, who thought, well, wizards, this is all going into dark magic, and whatever they speak about, it's luring them away from the real religion. I don't see it that way, because if you look at the meaning, if you analyze the symbolism, and you see it's really showing the battle that's going on, and also the effect of the whole thing. I never felt negative or down after reading this, after reading Harry Potter. It always had this cathartic effect also sometimes. The catharsis that you go through something and you feel clearer afterwards, or relieved or whatever. I never felt that there was a negative after effect of reading Harry Potter. I don't know. I mean, you haven't read it, so you can't join that discussion.
But it's interesting you mentioned LGBTQ a moment ago. I mean, Rowling herself has been a perpetual victim of such attacks.
Although, I mean, she is also a feminist, which is like part of the agenda.
What does that even, what does that even mean, though?
The way feminism was made popular was the first thing they fought for was the right to abort. So the right to kill unborn babies, which is pretty satanic thing to do if you do that on a mass basis. And so the whole concept was there to weaponize women against men. So the whole thing was there to destroy families behind feminism. Okay, Rowling's understanding of feminism is more to protect women, to protect women's spaces in public, which is now questioned by allowing men to go into women's spaces, which she is absolutely right to be angry about and really to fight for the protection of women. Sure, yeah, but she's colliding with the LGBTQ. That's true.
You've created a framework of the books, which you would call the 7 Chakras framework. Yeah. Take me through some of that.
Yeah, I explained the 7 chakras already when I explained the Tolkien symbolism, where you have, when you look at the Tree of Life, you have these 7 levels. You have the physical level, the energetic level, then you have the mental level, then at the center of the 7 you have the heart, which connects everything. Then you have the spiritual level, the soul level, and at the top you have God, the divine level. And the human experience or the spiritual journey goes from the physical level to the direct connection, not connection with God ultimately, but the experience of being one with God. That's the ultimate goal. That we are this, that we are the love that we try to bring in this world, into this world. And the 7 books, I mean, the number 7 is already important in Tolkien's world, but it's even more important with Rowling, because she has 7 books. She has these 7 Horcruxes. She has, what else is 7 kids of the Weasleys. And so the first book is about this physical level, which is ultimately the awakening to the fact that this life is more than just our physical existence, and there's something far deeper and far more valuable to gain if we use our human life properly for the purpose of finding out who we really are. Like if we use this life to to just eat and drink and sleep and procreate and just enjoy this physical level of it, then we miss who we truly are as a human being, because any animal does that. But as humans, we have one potential more than animals. Animals can never step outside their own biological nature, their own instincts that define them. But as humans, we can look at ourselves and we can go beyond that, and find the essence of who we are. Because the love that we are is not defined by biology. It's not. There's no organ. I mean, of course, the love is in the heart, but that's not. Well, it's not the physical body who defines that. Yeah, where's your question going? What should I talk about?
Well, so let's start with a quick overview. Yeah. So you have Harry, who he starts off in the story, he's 11 years old, and he finds out that a wizard killed his parents, Lord Voldemort, and then he's invited to go to Hogwarts to learn witchcraft and wizardry.
The other way around. He first finds out he's a wizard and goes to Hogwarts, and eventually in Hogwarts he finds out that a dark wizard killed his parents, and that dark wizard is still after him. Throughout the 7 books, he's after Harry. Harry is a symbol. So she made the task of finding out what symbolic meaning the figures have. She made that far easier by giving them what she calls a patronus or an animagus. So a certain animal that the wizards can either turn into or produce as a patronus, which is a light form for their protection. And he has the patronus of a stag who has these... this is a symbol for the aspiration to the divine, because it always points to heaven. I switch it off, sorry. And so that's a symbol for aspiring to the truth, to the divine. And with Harry's entrance into the wizard world, the whole story begins, which symbolizes that the spiritual path starts with us wanting to tread that path. It's having the aspiration code. There is something deeper. There's a higher truth. I want to know that. That's how the spiritual path begins. So that's when he enters and finds out everything else. So Hogwarts itself is a symbol of of the school of life, you could say, the spiritual school of life, how life teaches us to develop spiritually. That's Hogwarts.
So you've got Harry, who's the protagonist, and he transforms from a timid, abused child into, I suppose, the hero.
Well, he is, there's a duality here. You have wizards and you have muggles. Have you heard the term muggles? The non-wizards, those without any wizarding capabilities. And the muggles is this aspect of our mind that only considers this physical and visible and perceivable world as real. And everything deeper is nonsense. And the... oh my God. The family that he grows up with, they always call the wizarding world abnormal, and they have all these downgrading words for it. That's kind of the attitude of normal people, you could say, towards anything that is spiritual, that is really going for something deeper. But when you enter the spiritual path, you leave that world. You know there is something, or you feel there is something deeper, and you want to find out what is life really about. And that's Hogwarts, finding out this, or going this path, treading this path. And then you have this development upwards. You have the problems that you have on the different level, on the physical level, on the energetic level, on the mental level, on the heart level. There's different problems which she describes through the problems that happen in these 7 different volumes. and always coming to the point where you can step one step higher on the ladder, which is ultimately what is happening at the end of each volume, right? And the ultimate goal, finding out who we are, that the ego has no more pull on us, but we know who we are. That's the final goal. That's at the end when Voldemort is killed. So that's then the reaching, knowing who we are. That's the goal.
Well, you mentioned Muggles. Hermione comes from a Muggle family.
So,
she's this perfectionist who studies excessively and then
reads books all the time.
Close friends with,
so his two best friends symbolize what we need most on the path. And Hermione symbolizes, you could say, proper thinking or just common sense, analog to Frodo. In Harry Potter, in Lord of the Rings, Frodo is the most important person in Harry Potter. She's one of the two most important friends of Harry. So we need proper thinking.
Ron Weasley's the other one.
Ron Weasley is the other one. So Ron Weasley comes from the Weasley family, which is the weasel. If you look at the weasel, there's some pictures of weasels. They have ears that are this big. And when you look at them from the front, they look like a heart. So the Weasley family is a symbol of different heart qualities. And Ron, and there again, he has, his Patronus is a Jack Russell Terrier, I think, which is considered particularly for his loyalty. So, and as a member of the Weasley family, he symbolizes always to be true to your own heart. So he symbolizes the heart and staying true to who you are in your heart. So you have this level, you have this orientation on the path. So always respect common sense and always respect the feeling in your heart. So never go against common sense, never go against your heart. That's the best orientation on the path. So that's why the two are his best friends.
He doesn't come from a Muggle family, if I'm correct.
No, he comes from a wizarding, because love is always, the heart qualities are always spiritual. And okay, Hermione comes from a Muggle family, of course. Non-spiritual people, we all need common sense. We all need proper thinking. But spiritual path is not about just follow your heart and do whatever your heart wants. You need common sense all the time. You need proper thinking when you tread the path. And this quality that she stands for is very helpful. If you do need proper thinking on the path, particularly in the world as chaotic as it is today.
Am I correct in seeing an interesting parallel between Ron Weasley and Samwise?
Well, all spiritual qualities are somehow related. Samwise is this the symbolism of staying optimistic as an attitude. Yeah, not because there's reason to be optimistic, but because of the truth that if you lose your optimism, you cannot reach anywhere. And what we need today is also, as a human society, we need to stay optimistic that we can still bring love into this. We can still really achieve peace and harmony in society, although it doesn't look like it ever will be or whatever. But if we lose optimism, there's no more path. So optimism and, of course, staying true to your own heart is somewhat related, but it's not the same, really. So, yeah, there is some parallels, but it's slightly different.
You have Dumbledore, who's the wise and kind headmaster of Hogwarts, and he's a famous, I think, powerful wizard. but yet remains humble.
Yes. And he is always focused on what is Voldemort doing, and always has in his mind, well, we have to see that Voldemort doesn't do too much damage. So his Patronus is a phoenix, and a phoenix is a symbol for the consciousness beyond time and space. So actually the unity consciousness. So he symbolizes the sixth chakra, the wisdom chakra, the wisdom that comes from here, that is able to pull its wisdom even from beyond this world. So he's a symbol for the supreme wisdom, really, within the story. And of course, he is the most important mentor that Harry has, because the most important knowledge that Harry ultimately needs comes from Dumbledore. And of course, without wisdom, without really gaining wisdom on the path, we have no chance to reach the goal.
But doesn't Dumbledore also create events and situations that help Harry develop?
Yeah, sure. As he tells him things that he needs, but he also, when he sees, put it in other words, there are a number of things that we need to learn through experience. If someone tells us, it won't help us. You know, also, as when you have kids, there's so and so much that you can teach your kids, but you also know that there's certain things you can't prevent them from making mistakes. They have to make their own experiences. And that's the kind of attitude that Dumbledore takes. He knows that Harry, he will have to find out things for himself. He will have to make mistakes. Otherwise, he won't really learn.
There's the other professor, it's Snape, I think it is.
Most important figure, most interesting figure, Snape, yeah.
He doesn't like Harry.
It seems so. It seems so because the symbolic meaning of Severus Snape is... I haven't really read any other story where someone created a figure that symbolizes what Snape symbolizes, because he stands for the law of karma. Or you could also call him the Lord of Karma. So whenever Harry does something wrong, somehow Snape appears and gives him, or tries to give him, a hard punishment. And what karma does is, and he punishes him a lot for the things that Harry's father did to him when Snape was at school himself, because he was at the same grade. So karma seems to punish us for things that we didn't do. So that's always Harry's feeling. Why is he so hard on me? I didn't do anything. And he's so unfair. He really hates me. That's the sense that you get when you don't understand the laws of karma, and things are happening to you in life where you seem, I'm so innocent. Why is this happening to me? So that's how karma goes. And it's Harry's subjective feeling that he feels he hates me. It's when we have this feeling, okay, there's something in life that really hates me because I have this problem, and I didn't do anything. But that's because we don't remember everything we've done in past lives. And we have done things that were wrong. And we still have to balance them. And that's this figure, Snape. So he's very interesting because of that. When you understand a little bit, or when you have dealt with the laws of karma a little bit through ancient scriptures, you see that he's very well depicted by Rowling. It's very, very well written.
So if Harry is the main protagonist, Voldemort is obviously the main antagonist. Yes. This wizard who became evil.
Yeah. He's the symbol for the human ego, for this tendency that really wants to ignore everything that has been given. So the ego, basically, in its cruelest form, just wants control, wants power, and does not want to be subjected to the divine laws, or rather looks at the laws and wonders, how can I use these laws to my advantage and to the disadvantage of everyone else? So he also tries or thinks, Voldemort thinks that Snape is on his side. And if you extrapolate it to the outer world, the people who are most into or most driven by their ego, which is the global elites, people who don't mind to kill millions of people, or who have just nothing left that is in any form human, no empathy, no nothing, who just know their own egoistic goals, which ultimately is they want to control the rest of us completely. That's also then the symbol Voldemort for, because they function only by their ego. There's nothing more, there's nothing human left there. There's no conscience, there's no empathy, there's nothing. They just want power, they just want money, they just want control, and they just want the power to force everyone else to serve them, right? And if you take anything God-given away and let the ego just do as the ego wants without anything that checks it, then that is what Voldemort is. Which, like everyone else, it's a certain principle within the human mind, and that's the worst part of us. But every human being has that thing to think, oh, what is there for my advantage? How can I use this? So we normal humans, we have both within us, and we have this struggle between good and selfish within us. And that's why the whole story touches so many people, because that's the human experience that she's describing.
And in your analysis of Harry Potter, you talk about the center of love and the gateway to the true self. I mean, that is essentially the battle of humility versus ego.
Yeah, humility is a quality that we need to not give too much energy to our ego. The more humble we manage to be, the more the true self within us can shine, and the more energy we give to the ego and to egoistic goals, the more we go against who we really are. Yeah, humility is of course one thing, but the main goal is the main thing that we are is love, and the main duty or task that every human being has is it's our duty to bring love into this world, to make this world a more loving, more human place. And it's the ego that doesn't want that.
Why?
Well, the ego wants control and power. But if everything is ruled by compassion, right? If all societies were ruled by compassion, we would see, okay, this person is suffering, he is starving, let's take care of everyone, and all the resources given to us, we would see that everyone is happy and everyone is having a good life. But the ego, if it wants to accumulate money, if it wants to accumulate assets, if it wants control over others, means if it gets its way, we are taking away resources from others, we are taking away things from others, and we are creating poverty. So it's either or. If you have a world run through compassion, there's no ego that can do anything.
But where does ego come from?
Yeah, that's the ultimate human question. Why do we create misery for ourselves? It's the illusion that we think ultimately it's the illusion to feel that who we are is separate, can be separate from others, because the spiritual level, who we are, the love that we truly are, the spiritual truth, the innocence, that doesn't separate us from anyone. You see, if you have that experience, you have a wife, you have a kid, and you know that this love that you share is ultimately one love. There's no separation in love. It's like they are part of you. They're part of the love that you feel that you are. And that's ultimately, or should be, if we are in our essence, we feel that love connection with everyone. We see that love or that divinity in every human being. If we make that experience strong, and that's actually the goal of the spiritual path, is to experience us as who we are, and we are that love that we were created from. The reason God created us is love. No other reason.
But why do you think that ego was created?
God didn't create ego. That was us. And it was an accident, and I don't know if there's ever a satisfying answer. Why did humans create ego? I don't know. It just happened as an accident, and then we gave energy to it, and then it became bigger and bigger. And then most souls feel, okay, we are also creating suffering for ourselves, and then there's this struggle, because it's like having two selves. I mean, the love who we feel we are is one self, and the ego that wants certain things is another self, which is, however, a contradiction. And we all live with this if we have both in us, we all live with this contradiction within ourselves.
Let me ask my question differently. Do you think animals have ego?
Not in the human sense. Because, I mean, there, in that aspect, again, it's a Silmarillion and Tolkien's symbolism that goes a bit deeper, because he kind of describes in the Silmarillion how the ego was created. And in the creation story, where all the Valas sing a song together with Ilúvatar, who is the creator. And then there's one who thinks, oh, let me make my own music. I don't want to be a part of creation. I want to be the creator myself. It's this idea, I want to be God myself. But there's only one God, there's only one love. When we go separate from who we really are, we create a second thing. And the ego is the idea of creating something second, something additionally to God. But God is everything. We cannot create anything additionally to God, because God is everything. But we are powerful beings. If we create something, if we identify ourselves as something outside of God, which is an illusion because we can never be, but we can give a lot of power and energy to that illusion. And that somehow did happen. That's why we have the world we have. That's why we have the problems we have. Because some souls got the idea, okay, what if I create this ego and define myself as outside of God? And that's where all the problems come from that we have. And I cannot give you a more concrete answer to that question.
Well, I mean, it is a fairly existential question. I understand that. So, Ludwig, millions and millions of people around the world have read and watched Harry Potter. And I would guess for the most part, they see it as entertainment.
Sure. It is good entertainment. Also.
But there's another level, which is what you're highlighting.
It's well written. I mean, she did a really, really good job with it.
But if we were to go to the next level, how can we extract the symbolism in Harry Potter to dovetail with our daily life?
Of course, if you are, so to say, with your own consciousness, if you are in the muggle world, in her symbolic terms speaking, where you don't really have any connections to the spiritual depths of human life, then you won't find my books or interpretations interesting in any way. But if you are one who is really interested in spiritual matters and also trying to tread the spiritual path, then such people might find it helpful to read my books and see how I relate that symbolism to the human experience of who we are.
I think a different way of asking my question is instead of approaching it reactively, how can one approach Harry Potter proactively?
With respect to getting the spiritual meaning, you mean? Well, you can only get that when you already have some spiritual understanding and reflect upon the symbolism. Then you can get there, and that's what I'm trying to inspire. What I'm showing, I'm showing an interpretation there, and of course. Once you reflect upon the deeper meaning of this, you can also have your own thoughts on this. But of course, you need someone to give you some inspiration, and the books are meant for that inspiration to see. Okay, if you feel there's something deeper in it, here's some suggestions. See what you can do with it, and if it inspires you. But without someone who inspires you, I don't know. I mean, you have to have a spiritual mind somehow. Otherwise, you won't. You can only see what is already in your mind. You see, if you have absolutely, you have to. If you believe in mainstream science in the form that you think there's only the physical world is real, everything else is unreal, then you cannot use Harry Potter because it has to be in you already.
So what you're saying is that Harry Potter goes beyond the world of materialism.
It shows the experience people can make when you go deeper, and the problems you're facing as you go deeper. Like like I don't know how much you read about it. In the first book, there's a dog, a three-headed dog who guards the path into the depths. So that dog is the pulse within the pull towards the material world that we need to go beyond, or that we need to go past in order to go deeper into our mind. And that is the pull for food, the pull for sleep, and the pull for sex. That's the three heads which keep us most in just experience this physical level of existence.
The primal. The primal.
And they have to get past that dog to go deeper. And then there are seven tests that they have to pass to rescue the Philosopher's Stone, which they keep away from. Harry manages to keep away from Voldemort, which is also the chakra journey. So the second is then it's a journey up and the books then again repeat that in more detail. Like the fifth test is they have to kill an oh my God, why are words failing me today? A control, which is on this level. The fifth is this level, which is soul chakra level, spiritual level. And the main problem here is the problem of blame, going against others and being downgrading towards others. And that's repeated in the fifth volume, where the High Inquisitor of Hogwarts oh my God, why are these names failing me today?
The 7 books correspond to the 7 chakras. Each character corresponds to a certain aspect of spirituality. Ultimately, it's about the fall of human consciousness to the ego, and it's about returning to a state of humility and love.
Yes, it's the human journey to fight against the temptations of the ego that always wants to pull us towards things that are ultimately damaging to ourselves, damaging to our fellow human beings, and not helpful for our path, but going through and persisting on the path to want to know who you really are and ultimately become the love that is our true essence. Yeah. We either have to, certain qualities that we have to learn from and in many cases also overcome, like quarrel in the first is the tendency to try to be more than you are. So coming from a sense of having a very low self-esteem, and he's trying to become more. He goes out as a young teacher because he wants to be the one who finds Voldemort and wants to be praised for that. And then he finds Voldemort, and Voldemort takes control of him and controls him completely. So when the power that drives us is we want to have some fame, or we want to be valued more. When that is the thing that drives us, to be more than we feel we are, there's a big chance that our ego controls us through that drive of wanting to be more. So that's Voldemort controlling Quirrell and using him for his purposes. So that's, so that's one aspect we have to solve, or to put into its place so we can continue on the path. So we must not be driven by just a thirst for status or fame or whatever, but stay true to ourselves. So that's one of these things, and it's different things on the levels that we need to either learn from or control to get higher with our consciousness. Yes.
In books 4 and 5, one of the underlying themes that you point out is the lack of love for ourselves and the denial of our ego.
Yeah.
How do you think these spiritual challenges that you are highlighting mirror challenges that we face in real life? I'm thinking back, for example, to the COVID era. I think maybe that's a good example.
COVID is absolutely volume 5. Volume 5 is COVID so much that it always sometimes was a real pain for me to read, because it reminded so much of COVID, the way people were discriminated against who didn't want to follow the specific COVID rules, who didn't want to wear masks, who didn't want to get vaccinated, and all this. That was very much volume 5. 4 is the heart chakra, and the main problem here is the lack of love for others, or love for yourself also, which is symbolized by the figure of Barty Crouch Jr. and Senior, which have the same name. And it's the father who hates his son. It's the son who hates his father. It's this symbol for the complete inability to love ourselves. which is the main problem. We need that love for ourselves to be able to tread the path, because you can't give others what you don't have yourself, you see. And he comes as Mad-Eye Moody. He transforms through this polyjuice potion into Mad-Eye Moody throughout, so nobody knows it's really him. And Mad-Eye Moody is a symbol for very disciplined work on ourselves, because half of the Death Eaters in Azkaban owe his presence there to Mad-Eye Moody. So he is this really working hard on becoming a better human being. But if you work too hard on yourself and you lose the love for yourself, that turns into an ego thing. So Barty Crouch Jr. is really a Death Eater who serves Voldemort. And so that story shows, I mean, the fourth book shows what happens if you lose the love for yourself. If you're driven by something that is ultimately controlled by the ego. If you do something for the ego and you think you're doing it for love, but it's not really. So that's the fault. And that's present everywhere. I mean, if you look at all the leftist ideologies, like socialism, communism, and see the hundreds of millions of people they killed in history, like Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and that's this idea, yeah, we bring good into the world, but if there is no love, it's the opposite. I mean, you create a brutal world of ego, which we saw in the Soviet Union, in China, and so on. That's the idea of making the world better without being driven really by love. Because if you're driven by love, you don't do all these things that they did. And also in politics, that's very much this lack of love. The idea is that parties should give us versatility and everyone should be represented. But because the way people treat each other, and there's absolutely no love, and they treat each other like enemies, these parties together, they create a world of complete ego, and they are completely controlled by selfish forces. So these parties who fight each other, they are easy prey for the high finance in the background, the financiers. They are all controlled. And that's all because we accept that the way people treat each other is without love. Right? And that's very much contained in Volume 4, this problem. That we cannot achieve anything of value in this world if we act without love. We cannot.
Well, we can see, since you mentioned politicians, Donald Trump is a very humble man. He doesn't have a big ego at all.
And he wants everyone to acknowledge how humble he is.
But I suppose he wouldn't be where he is were it not for ego. I wonder if ego does play also a positive role.
No, it cannot. It cannot, because love can only fully reign on this earth. I mean, the supreme ruler should be love. And I mean, ego could play a positive role if ego decides to completely serve, and never rule, never try to dominate, never try to control, but serve the love. But that's ultimately how, on the path, ego is, in the very end, being dissolved. Because if love really rules everything, then we don't really need ego.
What is the counter-binary to ego? Is it love or is it humility?
Well, it's all these spiritual qualities. I mean, they are very closely related. Of course, depends on what the ego wants. If the ego wants to be seen as, oh, I'm the greatest, I'm the best, I'm supreme, then it's very much humility that you need. And if the ego just wants to spread hatred, it's love that you need, and so on. If the ego tries to instill fear into others, well, to counter fear, what you need courage, you need self-confidence, all these qualities. It depends what the ego is doing and fighting against. Yeah.
J.K. Rowling is still alive. If she happened to listen to our conversation, do you think she would be nodding along?
I would think she might find it interesting. I actually tried 3 times to write to her. I wrote a letter to her address in Scotland that was never answered to. Then I had a friend in Vienna who used to work for the Austrian television, and she wrote, and then at least there was, because it was television writing, there was a reply, we are so sorry, we get so many writing, you know, these things, so nothing. And then I know someone who knows a neighbor of hers, and she took a letter of mine to that neighbor, but she said, there's no chance, they have absolutely no contact with her there, and so there was no part. I would like to have a discussion with her about how much she could go along and how much she wouldn't. I would be interested, because I think she very much wrote out of inspiration. So she has a lot. I think she has a lot of spiritual knowledge, but I think she's not completely aware how deep her symbolism goes. So that's why I would find it very interesting.
Maybe you shouldn't write a letter to her. Maybe write a spell.
The most powerful spell is love. Yeah, I can send her my love, but if she reacts to that, I don't know.
Or write to her in Latin.
Yeah, I learned Latin for 6 years. I studied Latin at school for 6 years. So, but yeah.
I mean, weren't the spells in Harry Potter in Latin anyway?
It's actually, when you know Latin, it's very simple. It's like revelio hominem, like man, show yourself. So if you want to know if there is someone, it's all.
I wonder if the actors themselves are aware of any of the stuff that you're talking about.
The actors, I don't think so. I mean, they see, like all the fans, they are fans of this. They see it as it's a very, very well-written entertainment. And if you go along with my interpretations or not, it always stays a very well-written entertainment also. So you don't have to have this. It's just if you're curious and want to go for these deeper things, deeper understanding, and have these thoughts, and what can we do in the world as chaotic as it is at the moment? What can we do for a better world? And then it can be helpful. I think it can be helpful to read the books. My books, my interpretation. Yeah.
I'm going to eventually attempt your books, but I think before that, I might start off by watching the Harry Potter series. My wife will be quite pleased.
Do that. And then think for yourself, knowing that there's might be something deeper. You'll have your own thoughts on this.
All right. For now, Ludwig, how can I follow your Harry Potter work and, of course, your Lord of the Rings work?
Yes, for English, I have translated the main work, which is the Ring Annihilation and the Symbolism, into English. Translating my Harry Potter book into English is on my to-do list. Hasn't happened yet. But maybe that in future, with every volume I translate, there might be an occasion to have a talk about it. But for now,
for sure. Well, I mean, for now, is there a website that people can go to?
Yeah, it's called neunheit.de. Neun, like the German nine, neunheit.de. But I can give you a link, and if people are interested in my way of interpreting things, there's already the ebooks on the Tolkien works, and there's shortly coming my book about the monetary system, the solution to the monetary problem, and so that will also be there in the link that I give you.
And of course, you can easily search your name, Ludwig Gartz, and a whole bunch of stuff will come up.
Thank you.
Ludwig Gartz, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
And thank you.